I've been stuck in my dorm all semester trying to keep my head above water, clawing at my face in the middle of the night as I struggle to keep my eyes glued to my computer. When finals week finished, I was eager to get the hell out of there. But I didn't receive the homecoming I was expecting, and the reality of my new situation is slowly killing me inside. I flew home the week after Christmas. Carry-on in hand, I walked into the airport lobby expecting to see my family waiting for me, anxious to greet me after months away, but nobody was there. I stood there awkwardly scanning the crowd of travelers, hoping to catch a glimpse of a familiar face. But the more I searched, the more disappointment built up in my chest. Clutching my phone, I stared at the screen awaiting a text, a call, any sign that would let me know someone was coming. That sign never came. It had been about 30 minutes after deboarding when I decided to call my dad, but his number went straight to voicemail. It was odd. My dad never had his phone off. I called my mom, and after a few rings, the pre-recorded message played from the other end. The robotic voice filled me with sadness, the tone disingenuous and cold. "We're sorry, phone number. Can't come to the phone right now." Knowing that they would eventually call back, I took a seat in the waiting area. An hour came and went, and I was still awaiting their call. I tried Dad's phone again and perked up when the line actually rang this time. 3 rings later, my dad's throaty voice came through the speaker. "Hello, did you forget something?" I said, annoyed. There was a pause as I heard my dad's breathing distance itself from his phone. I pictured him playfully looking at the screen, feigning confusion. His breathing returned to the speaker, and I patiently awaited the punchline. I rolled my eyes when it came. "I'm sorry. Who is this?" I should have known this was one of his pranks and huffed my frustration through the call. "I'm at the airport. Are you coming to get me?" A second pause came, this time lingering, fermenting in the palpable tension. "I'm sorry. I think you have the wrong number." He's never known when to end a ruse. "Dad." The third pause was just as long and only ended when I heard the jingle telling me that the call had ended. I was stunned. The lengths this man would go to just to play his little game. When I called back, the line rang, but he didn't answer. "I'm sorry, number. Can't come to the phone." I angrily ended the call and dialed again. Once again, the robotic voice greeted me instantly. "I'm sorry." I was fuming. The Uber ride home was not a happy endeavor. A scowl plastered on my face the whole time as the views of town felt sour under the ridiculous circumstances. As soon as I walked through the door, my dad would be on the floor laughing his ass off at the minor inconvenience he caused me. It would be the highlight of his week. The car came to a stop outside our house, the familiar lettering on the mailbox bringing slight relief in the shitstorm that was my life. I was finally home, luggage in hand. I walked up to the door and gripped the knob, but when I tried turning it, it wouldn't budge. It was the last thing I needed. My fury spilled out through my knuckles as I bashed my hand on the door. "Dad? Open the door. I'm here." There was movement in the window, the curtains swaying behind the blinds. Someone was watching me from the other side. I waved and the blinds fluttered closed. They were really outdoing themselves this time. Footsteps walked across the floor on the other side of the walls and stopped just on the opposite end of the door. The knob unlatched and the door swayed on its hinges, letting out an anguished creak. Someone was peering out of the small crack, their gaze dismissive and cold. "Hi, how can I help you?" I was clenching my fists, the joints in my hand snapping under the pressure. "Ha ha, very funny," I said as I touched the door and tried pushing it aside. My dad's eyes panicked as the door pushed against his hands, and he fought my push with one of equal strength. Wow, what the fuck do you think you're doing?" Taken aback by his sudden conviction, I cowered back, stepping off the welcome mat. I'd never heard my dad curse. He opened the door the rest of the way, revealing a wooden bat in his hand, his knuckles white with intent. His shoulders were stiff and hands shaky. He looked ready to use it, but the fear in his eyes hoped he wouldn't have to. "Dad?" I questioned. The quizzical look he gave me was gut-wrenching. "It's me, Maya. Your daughter." My mom peered over his shoulder. "Honey, what's going on?" When her eyes met me, she yelped. Without breaking his connection with me, my dad answered her question. This person says their name is Maya. He paused, still calculating the situation himself. Our daughter. Horror washed over my mom's expression, and the words snagged in her throat. My dad finally glanced over at her, confirming the apparent absurdity of the situation. When their eyes returned, my dad raised the bat, shoving it in my chest. Look, I don't know if you're crazy, having some kind of a psychotic breakdown, or just some stalker, but you are not Maya. You, disgust fluctuated his voice as he eyed me up and down, are not my daughter. The prank had long outstayed its welcome, and I fought the awkwardness with a fragile giggle, but tears began forming in my eyes. Crackling emotion accompanied the words that left my mouth. Mom, Dad, this isn't funny anymore. My dad bared his teeth, a primal display of anger, a premonition of violence. His jaw unlatched, and I saw the fury start to wallow up from his chest. But before he could say anything, a chilling voice drifted from inside the house. Dad, what's going on? She stepped up behind my mom, craning over both of them, trying to get a look at the spectacle at the door. A void formed in the center of my chest as I recognized the person standing behind my parents. It was me. It was like staring into a mirror. The blonde hair, glasses, eyes, mouth, tone of voice, an identical twin, a doppelganger, an imposter. Shock rang in my ears and the world became distant, muted. It was as if a bomb had gone off beside me. I was woozy, fighting not to hyperventilate. The head of the bat pushed the air out of my lungs. Hey, stop looking at her like that, you freak. I had been staring at the duplicate but wasn't sure for how long. My mom cradled her baby in her arms, protecting the girl, protecting me from myself. My dad gently placed the bat under my chin and forced my face in his direction. Look at me, you freak. If I see you around here or near my daughter again, I will take this bat and smash your head in. Do you hear me? Too stunned to say anything, I just stared at him. The bat shoved me back a few feet. Do you hear me? He growled. My mom held him back. Honey, that's enough. My dad lowered the bat but kept it at the ready. Now, get the hell out of here before I call the cops. My mind sputtered and my feet started moving. It was as if I was on autopilot, as if my body was protecting me from enduring more heartbreak. When I got to the sidewalk, the door slammed, and I was left out in the cold, like a piece of trash. I wandered the street for a while, my luggage rolling behind me as I tried to figure out my next move and what the hell was going on. I eventually came across a corner store and shuffled my way inside. The clerk gave me a strange look as I walked through the door. I asked for the bathrooms and he pointed me to the back of the store, eyeing me warily as I made my way in that direction. A woman was stepping out of one of the stalls as I walked inside and jolted when she saw me. I tried smiling at her, but she didn't return the gesture. She scurried out of the bathroom in a rush. I thought it was strange, but with so much going on, I put it out of my mind. That is until I walked up to the mirror and saw what everyone else saw. His beard was long, gray, and matted. The wrinkles on his face were deep, skin leathery. There was this smothered filth across his brows, as if he'd been standing near a coal fire all night. I reached for the glass and wiped at its surface, hoping the image would self-correct. When it didn't, I touched my face. The loose skin didn't bounce back as my fingers dragged across my cheeks. The warmth of my tears streaked down my face and soaked into the fibers of the man's beard in the mirror. The store clerk's reflection came into frame. Sir, this is the women's bathroom. You can't be in here. My hair is no longer silky, now wiry and gray. The blue in my eyes is covered in a milky haze. The struggles of a life I never lived mark my identity with deep ruts. I'm an old man when yesterday I was only 19. I felt sick, the acid rising up my chest, burning my insides. I tried holding it back, but it filled my mouth and I puked into the sink. The vomit was dark, the white porcelain speckled in dots of red. I never liked the sight of blood. The man in the reflection looked scared, his bushy brows slanted, an 11 between his eyes. He lifted a hand and caressed the side of his face. The skin stretched but took too long to bounce back. His hand trailed down to his long, filthy beard. It felt exactly like it looked. Rough, rugged, ugly. I started to sob, but when the sadness left my throat, the thickness of my own voice startled me. That was when the bathroom door pushed open. I hardly noticed him come in, the store clerk. His reflection stepping into the mirror's frame, he looked irritated. "Sir, this is the women's bathroom. You can't be in here." "Sir?" The word sent an icy shiver across my skin, and I felt the fear trail down my leg. It was hot, and it soaked into the fabric of my pants, trickled onto the laminate floor, pooling under my boots. The stench of fresh ammonia filled my nose. The store clerk's eyes dropped towards the sudden leak festering from the tiles, before realizing. He threw his hands up. "Come on, man. Who the hell is gonna clean that shit up?" I told them that we shouldn't let homeless people in here, the shit that I deal with on a daily basis. "Come on, out." He snapped his fingers, tolerance fleeting, but I was frozen, unable to move, to speak. It was only when the moisture covering my legs started to cool that I started trembling. I mouthed a quiet plea for help, but the muscles of my neck spasmed. The only thing that came up was a quiet croak. The clerk massaged his forehead. "Great, another junkie. Come on, we can't have you shooting your veins in the woman's bathroom. Out." He hesitated when grabbing the sleeve of my jacket. That was about the time he saw what I'd done to the sink. "Ah, the fuck is wrong with you, old man?" He never touched me. A disgusted look washed across his face as if I was riddled with leprosy. "That's it. I'm calling the cops." His feet clattered across the floor and he thrust the door aside, storming out. I started coughing, my hand reaching for my face, covering my mouth. When the coughing fit stopped, I looked at my hand, finding a wad of coagulated red. I felt hot and the room started to spin. Obvious affliction aside, I felt sick. I was sick. Further confirmation of that fact squirted out of my lungs and coated my clothes. The room swayed and I found myself propped up by the strength of the wall. I started toward the door and walked out into the store. The clerk was punching a number into the phone but stopped when he saw me, bloody, weakening. The woman that was in the bathroom before me rounded a shelf, screaming at the horror, the cheap bottle of wine in her hands shattering at her feet. The clerk slammed the phone and pointed to the door. "Out!" I stammered in his direction, outstretching a hand, quietly begging for mercy. There was no mercy given that day. With the fibers of a broom, he swatted me away, careful not to touch the urine and blood on my clothes. I tripped through the threshold of the door, landing on my face. The clerk tossed the luggage I had with me onto my back and the zipper opened. The concrete was decorated with my clothes, women's clothes. Once again, the clerk looked disgusted. With the handle of the broom, he lifted a frilly pink piece of underwear, holding it up to the light. "What kind of twisted shit are you into, old man?" He flicked the garment away. It fell on my face. "Get the hell out of her, you freak." I tried explaining. "You don't understand," I said while showing him my palms. The voice that rose from my chest didn't make the statement sound too convincing. Not even to me. I was guilty of being in possession of my own belongings, a crime I never thought possible. The store's automated bell dinged and the clerk's image warped by the shimmer of the glass's reflection. That was when I caught a glimpse of the pathetic pervert on the ground. I felt sorry for him, for myself. The woman that was inside the store pushed the glass door open. Stepping around me, her trajectory exaggerated. I wobbled to my feet, feeling a shudder through my chest when the ground was once again under my shoes. The asphalt rolled across the ground. It was as if I was on a ship in the middle of a stormy sea. I used the luggage to prop myself up and started walking down the street. The plastic handle barely held my weight. It bowed, struggling to keep me upright, a task that would have been easier only a day ago. The wheels under the bag thunked on the sidewalk's cracks, the sound unrhythmic, a product of my fleeting ability to walk a straight line. I felt embarrassed to be out here like this, but no one paid me any mind, just another bum in the city. All of a sudden I wished they were looking at me. If they'd seen the 19-year-old version of me, people would be rushing to aid the tiny girl fighting to reach the street corner. But now, burly and unsightly, people refused to look my way, a minor inconvenience in an otherwise normal day. I felt lonely, alone, scared. I walked past an alley, looking down its length, the two walls on either side shrouding the corridor in darkness. It was a good enough place as any to lay my head down and die. When I walked into the shadow of the day, the temperature dropped drastically, but at least I was hidden from the winter winds, from the cold, cruel world. I leaned my back on the brick siding, hugging my bag, holding on to the remnants of a life that was no longer here. I closed my eyes and started slowly drifting away. The anguished thoughts muted in the warmth of the thickening veil until nothing. The gentle hum of fire gently stirred my eyes open. There was a barrel directly in front of me, the logs crackling in the heat. I thought I was dead, but the radiating warmth of the flames told me otherwise. The sky was dark. It was night. I had been asleep for who knows how long. Not long enough if you ask me. You're lucky I found you when I did. There was a pair of eyes looking at me from the other side of the fire, the flickering lashings of orange glistening in his gaze. Who are you? I thought of saying, but the cough in my chest stifled the question. Though it wasn't necessary, the look on my face said it all. You were freezing to death out here. Had a friend of mine go like that last winter. He took a stick and repositioned the logs. Angry sparks sprinkled into the air, and I sat upright. It was about that time I noticed that I was wrapped in a heavy wool blanket. I was puzzled at its sudden appearance. That's not a gift. I'm gonna need that back after you're done. I was just getting tired of hearing your teeth rattle. He was shuffling something in his hands. It wasn't till I looked at the ground that I realized what it was. My wallet was on the ground. He was rummaging through my credit cards, my ID. He held the little square up to the light, reading aloud. Maya. He laughed a smoker's laugh while eyeing me over the picture. What do we have here? Maya, Maya, Maya. You steal these. He flipped the card in my direction, letting me see the picture. Turning it back, he looked at it through a tired squint. Not a bad-looking girl. His words were accompanied by an astonished whistle. Wouldn't mind spending some time with Maya, if you know what I mean. Lust filled his eyes. Anger boiled in my chest. Give those back. My voice was throaty, rusty. Well, it speaks. Patronization engulfed his tone. She your kin, he said, pointing at the ID with his eyes. I didn't say anything, measuring my words, hesitating to say the truth. Well, if she ain't you kin. His brows were suggestive, hungry, the vile thoughts racing through his mind. Maya, Maya, Maya. Man, oh man. My Maya. Maya, someone else said. I turned my head, searching for the familiar voice that called my name. For a second, I thought someone had finally recognized me, that maybe I was saved. But my heart dropped when I saw the figure that was walking past the entrance to the alley. It was me. Her blonde, silky hair shimmered under the street lamp, her petite frame dwarfed by the scale of the buildings. It was uncanny to see myself as others did. Maya, wait up. The voice echoed through the street, down the alley. My mom and dad stepped between the gap at the end of the corridor. They looked dressed up, as if ready for a fancy dinner. When my parents caught up to her, my dad put his hand around the girl and they walked out of view. I shot to my feet, the ground still unsteady. I hurried after them. Wait, where are you going? The homeless man shouted, but his voice never registered. I stumbled into the street to see the happy family making its way down the sidewalk. I hurried after them, hiding behind parked cars, still wary of the way my dad had threatened me, using the blanket as a cloak. They chatted jovially, my dad making his off-brand jokes, my mom laughing sympathetically, and the imposter beside them rolling her eyes just as I would. They looked like the perfect little family, my perfect little family. They filed into a door one at a time, the lettering above the building reading Fork, an upscale joint in the center of downtown. This was my dad's favorite place. We'd often come here on special occasions, holidays, birthdays, homecomings. I hid behind an SUV on the other side of the street. The waiter sat them at a table right by the window, the warm lighting of the restaurant spotlights making the scene look straight out of a Hallmark movie. The three looked over the menu as if they didn't already know what they were going to order. Dad always got the steak, Mom the trout, me a hybrid surf and turf. The waiter took the menus away and they all chatted across the table. I imagined how the conversation was going. Dad asking me how school was going. Me telling them how much I hated my major. Mom being the moderator between us. Back then, this would all seem so mundane. Now the sight filled me with sadness. I missed them, my life. A sudden bout of anger roared in my chest, and I wanted to wrap my hands around the imposter's neck. I wanted to feel the life slowly drain from her face, my fingers digging into the flesh of her skin. She stole my life from me, and I needed her dead. I needed her rotting in the ground. I had never been so angry in my life. My dad stood up from his chair and made his way toward the bathroom. The imposter and my mom stayed back, smiling, talking, while I imagined driving the dinner fork into the doppelganger's chest. The waiter rolled the food out on a cart, placing it on the table. Just as I imagined, Dad got the steak, Mom the trout, but me, the chicken. I hated chicken, the taste, the texture. Never in a million years would I order the chicken. I expected my mom to say something about this, but she never did. Instead, the conversation droned on. The two were friendly, too friendly. My mom and I always got along, but not like this. The imposter would say something and my mom would burst into laughter. It was as if she had her under a spell, as if they were best friends. It was too good to be true. The imposter pointed to a fixture on the wall, surely commenting on it. My mom turned, gazing into the painting's face. Not like I've ever been an art critic, so it all felt off. But the more my doppelganger spoke, the more mesmerized Mom looked with the picture until she was fully invested with each brush stroke. That was about the time the imposter's motive became clear. From the depths of her purse, she pulls out a tiny veil, white powder encapsulated within. While Mom still studied the painting, she sprinkled some powder over her plate and did the same to Dad's. Mom turned and the doppelganger hid the veil under the table. I don't know what was in the vial, but I knew it was nothing good. The hair on my neck was standing on end, and I had a very bad premonition about what was about to happen. Dad wandered out of the bathroom, and that was about the time I noticed the odd way he was walking. His steps were usually fluid, authoritative, but now he was dragging his feet, stepping lazily. There was a blank look in his eyes, a shell of his normal self. He retook his chair, clapped his hands, rubbing them together, ready to eat. The three of them picked up their utensils and began cutting apart the food. My senses on overload, I didn't even realize I was halfway across the street. I needed to stop them. I walked in front of the window, catching the attention of my doppelganger. When she turned, the other two took note, looking out the same window. My dad's back instantly tensed and the back of his knees thrust the chair out from under him. "I thought I told you to make yourself scarce, you filthy bum." Dad's voice was muted through the window, but it was loud enough to vibrate the glass. The whole restaurant was looking in my direction. I ran to the door, screaming out my warning. "Don't eat that. I just watched the bitch poison you." I pointed accusingly at the little blonde by my mom, her eyes watery with fear. My mom wrapped a hand around her, quelling her anxiety. Dad glanced over at her before returning to me, his teeth clenched with rage. I'd never been punched in the face, but there I was, my nose stinging as every nerve ending fired, the smell of pain filling my sinuses. The next thing I knew, my feet were dragging across the ground, two waiters pulling my arms, my dad growing smaller the farther they pulled me. I was crying, fluid streaming down my face, blood, tears. Dad's scowled face, Mom's worried expression, the imposter's teasing smile. She was finding joy in my torment. Her lips curled devilishly. They pulled me out through the back door and tossed me into an alley. The same alley. I wiped the blood from my face and looked around. The homeless man was gone, and my belongings with him. That was when my cough returned and the crimson particulates festered out of my mouth. Something shifted deep inside me. For some reason, I knew that whatever this was going to be the end of me. But before I died, the doppelganger was going to suffer my wrath.